Welcome to Beyond the Picket Fence podcast, the untold stories of the American dream, where we talk about people, life, and business. I'm your host, Missy Stagers.
And I'm Max Cause. And our guest today is Scott Barr, steward of Southwest Exteriors, and a man that has gone through a lot, has learned a lot, and has a lot to teach. And I can't wait to get into it and get to tap into that vast knowledge and experience that you've had over the years of building a great company, building great people, and really building yourself. To get started, Scott, what do people need to know about you?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with the easy part first. So, born in San Antonio in September 1961, and have lots of love for the city and the people, and very blessed by the opportunity to grow up here. And and then on the other side, I struggle with a lot of things. Recovering addict from alcohol and control and perfection, and so that's a lifelong journey. And you said I'm going to be teaching, but I feel like I'm a lifelong learner. So I love to share what we're learning together. So
thank you. And yeah, no, there's so much you're going to teach, and I always love to hear people that think that they have a lot to learn, are mostly the people that have the most to teach. Scott, so you mentioned right off the bat that you've gone through some struggles, some personal struggles, and learned from those and growth from those. Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about some of your high points and low points in your life, if you will.
Yeah, so I would say for me to talk about my life, I talk about it from a faith perspective. So I was saved when I was 8 years old and grew up in the church, and which was good, except I didn't really understand that it was all about a relationship with Jesus. It's not a religion. And so that, along with my family of origin, kind of how I grew up, and we all have family of origin issues, and so that led me into a real rebellious season that really got started when I had a girlfriend in high school. I think I was a sophomore and she was a freshman, and I was madly in love with her, and she broke up with me very unexpectedly, and she didn't do anything wrong, but I was just completely unprepared for that level of emotional pain. And I'd started experimenting with alcohol and tobacco and all the fun stuff in junior high, and so started a cycle of binge drinking. And then, just to tell the short version of the story, I came home from summer break between summer of 1982, and my mom says, "I think you have a drinking problem." I said, "Well, I don't think I do." And what I didn't know is I had a girlfriend at school who was reporting to my mom what I was doing at school, which was very much appreciated. And so anyway, she said, "Well, I've got somebody at AA. I'd like for you to meet them." And so I went, and so I discovered pretty quickly that I always thought an alcoholic was somebody that drank all the time. But what I discovered through the program was it's actually somebody that's powerless over alcohol. And then the first step in recovery is to admit you have a problem. So I did that, and looking back, what the value of that was that it was the first time that I was in a group of people that were being vulnerable and authentic. And that's really what I believe God used to flip me and get me on the right track. And I would hear stories of older men talking about how they destroyed their families, their careers, and I was ambitious, and I didn't want that. So I clearly didn't want what they had gone through. So that, that got me off of the path of self-destruction, but I didn't give my life back to following Jesus. Promiscuity was kind of a one sin that was not negotiable for me, that I was unwilling to give up, and I believe that unrepentant sin is what keeps us separated from God. So fast forward, that was 1982. Fast forward to 1994, and I had gotten married in 1991. I married a woman who wasn't following Jesus. I wasn't following Jesus. She has a very strong personality, and I have a strong personality, and we were not a good fit. And so actually I got married in 1991, and then in 1994, my grandmother died unexpectedly, and she was the one person that I had really experienced unconditional love from in my life. And so that triggered the emotional pain. And then I went to work for what was Southwest Remodelers in May of 1990, and the business started in 1989. In 1991, the guy who started the business wanted to get out of the business and go into a separate business. And so he asked me if I wanted to buy it, and I told him yes. So we worked out a 1-year buyout deal. And so that would have ended at 93, but he stayed on. His other business deal fell through, and he decided to open a competing company, and I wasn't smart enough to have a non-compete agreement. And so he did that. He opened it. My grandmother died. He opened the competing company and took employees, took the customer list, and that was a huge battle. And then my wife filed for divorce, all in a real tight period of time. And it was those, and then I'd bought the business out of cash flow. I kind of had some accounting classes in college, but I didn't really understand cash flow accounting. So we were deep in debt. And so it was all those things that I believe God used to crush me and just start the process of remaking me. So really the journey I'm on today started at that low point in 1994.
So it sounds like there's been a few low points. In one was you were in the middle of business, but let's talk about that first one, because you were very young where you recognized that you were powerless over alcohol. And then there's like a gap here of about 12 years. But what was that first stage of learning for you? Recognizing what alcohol could do and how it had affected you. What did you learn from that, and how did you use that for the next 12 years? Because by the time you had your second low point, you had gone through some growth and success.
Yeah, good. I never thought about it that way. So 12 years between those two. And that's one of the things I believe that God can use a breakdown to lead to a breakthrough. So those are breakdowns that we're talking about. So I would say that one of the biggest things was show me your friends and I'll show you your future. So I had to completely disconnect from the group I was with and running with, and that recovery community then became my new community. So without doing that, I would have slipped back into the old ways. Oh, come on, you just have one drink with us kind of thing. So another thing is I don't believe there's anything wrong with drinking alcohol in moderation. My wife drinks wine, and so I'm not anti-alcohol, but for some people, I have that kind of compulsive, addictive personality. So anyway.
So you recognize that you need to change your group.
That was, yeah.
You recognize, or you start to understand yourself a little bit better. How did you use that to then, again, decide to go to college, get some classes, buy a business? What was that growth like during that time?
Yeah, that's a good question. I just kind of had that inner drive to be successful, which is there's a healthy side to that, and then there's a very unhealthy side to that. So I think that was part of it. And then I went into commercial real estate in 1983. I was going to school at UTSA, and it was Christmas break. I didn't have any money, and I went into the career placement office, and there was a index card on the wall that said something like shopping center developer needs a runner. So I went and applied for that job, got it, went to work for those guys, and they taught me everything not to do in business. They were heathens. And so I learned a lot really quickly and was able to grow with that company. And then the real estate market started to collapse around 1986. And so we went through that together. So I did really well for a few years and then lost everything. And so I got into this business because I needed a job, and I was just trying to survive at that time. So, so I don't know if that.
What were some of the lessons you learned in working for them, though, during that time, during your real estate, short stint in real estate? What did you learn about business?
Yeah, so one thing was that to be very conservative and be very frugal. I mean, these guys were borrowing money to build shopping centers, taking money out of the loan and kind of kicking it back to themselves through the construction manager. So they were basically, embezzling from the bank, and just they were very focused on having a lot of fun, and they had a lot of fun for a season, and then when it collapsed, it smashed them. So that was one thing. So
that's a pretty important business lesson right there.
Yeah, and
manage your money well.
That's right, and I tell people that I would much rather go broke in my 20s than in my 50s or 60s. So I got that. Got that lesson early in my career.
How were you able to overcome it?
I think just survival mode. I don't know that I can take any credit for it. I had my first job was when I was 13. I was helping a classmate's father put up aluminum patio covers in Ray Ellison subdivisions because I loved being outside. Ever since I was a little kid, I always wanted to be outside, not inside. So every summer I would have some kind of construction job. So I guess I kind of got into construction and real estate from an early age. And then when When that business, the real estate business, closed down, a guy that I worked with in the real estate business had been in the home improvement business. And so he went to work selling home improvements. And the company that he was working for got sold, and he stayed on through the transition. And the guy that bought the business was an Arthur Anderson accounting guy who worked in their venture capital side. And he decided he wanted to go into business and get out of public accounting world. So he bought this business. And after he bought it, the guy who ran basically the back end of the business, the installation part of the business, moved to Atlanta with the guy that sold it. And so Steve, my friend, said, hey, I think you could do this. So he told Bob, I got a friend that can do this. So he got me a job, got me in, and I really didn't know what I was doing. And he was a salesman, so he sold Bob on that I could do it, And so he basically taught me how to do that, what needed to be done. I learned, that's one thing I can learn. I pick up on things pretty quick. And so I was able to do that. And then within the year, he shut the business down. He paid, a significant amount of money for it and closed it down. And what I learned from that was that he didn't understand the essence of the business. He was super smart in an accounting mind, but he made a lot of changes and really didn't have he bought really a really toxic culture and a very unethical business, and he tried to convert it and was unable to. So I learned a lot just watching that. So a person that worked at that company went to work for Southwest Remodelers, and then she told the owner of Southwest Remodelers that she knew somebody that would be good on running the installation team, basically. So I went to work there in May of 1999. That's how that happened. So.
And what was, when you say it was a toxic culture, tell us what you learned not to do in a culture like that.
Yeah, so I would say that just in my mind, I'm not saying this is the way to look at it, but in my mind, I have a biblical worldview and then there's a secular worldview. And so that business was very much run with a secular worldview. And the way that I summarize this, nobody would ever admit this or say this, but the way that I summarize it is that the business model is you tell a lie to get a lead, you tell a lie to get a sale, and you tell a lie to get the check. Whatever you do, did you get the check? And they don't care how you get it done, just get it done. So that was my introduction into the home improvement business.
Which is true for too many companies to this day. And what have you seen from companies that do that?
Yeah, I call it short-term thinking versus long-term thinking. So I'm thinking eternal, and they're just thinking about how much money can I make as fast as I can make it. So it's very short-term, short-sighted thinking.
And I think that's one of the most important things that I think that a lot of people that are wanting to go into business or are in business need to really understand that that is not sustainable and that will ruin your reputation, and then ultimately it won't help you grow. And the other road is more difficult, more challenging in many ways. It's slower, but ultimately leads to the type of business that you've built. Let's talk about your second big collapse. I don't know what's the word that you used. You said you need to break down before you can get built back up. So what do you think led to that? What did you not know? Because I believe it's the decisions that we make, the choices that we make that ultimately put us in the positions. Right. I also believe it's meant to be, but you didn't know some things that led you there. And then you learned something that got you out of that. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so great question. So that was also in 1994 when that breakdown occurred. And then in April of 94, I got connected to what I call a mastermind group for the remodeling business. And it was two women that were based on the East Coast that had built these mastermind groups. And one of them, her husband had built a very successful remodeling business in the D.C. area, and then they got divorced, and she opened this consulting business. And so what I learned really quickly by being part of that mastermind group was the companies that had the highest level of owner satisfaction and the highest level of profitability, they all had one thing in common. And that one thing that they had in common was a high repeat and referral rate. So then I started looking at, well, what do I have to do that? So that's where we made the flip from a transactional model to a relational model.
Talk to us more about that transition and kind of what does it take? And so you became aware of, hey, there's better business to be had by people coming back than by having to consistently find new ones. How did you get it done?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing was to focus on the client experience. So, most companies are just, again, focused on getting the check, focused on the bottom line. They're not concerned about the client or the client's experience. So I think it was really being what I would say client centric, and trying to see everything from their perspective. So I think that's one thing.
What were some of the things that you put in place to be able to capture that, to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it started with creating some processes, which I'm not good at, but in those days it was survival mode. So I think that was part of it, and then getting the right people. So it's about building the right team, and as Jim Collins talks about, get the right people on the bus, get them in the right seat. So that started in 1994. So there's nobody with us today that was there in 1994, and it's been 30 years now to get to the point where we're at now. And that's also one of my weaknesses. I'm so focused on that client experience, and this was actually a big breakthrough. Is I had somebody, I don't remember who it was, somebody I worked with said, you really care much more about the client than you do about us. So that's where I took that too far, because I was, anyway. So that's a whole other story.
No, that's actually very important. I'm
Okay.
glad you said that.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you change caring about your people as well?
So that's a huge struggle. So that's actually kind of the season that I just came out of, and the season I'm going into, is to focus on relationships versus results, and that's a whole long story. So
I think we have time.
yeah. So just we grew really really quickly during COVID, and we had our core business, and this was a vision that was built on a model in Ann Arbor, Michigan called Zingerman's. And Zingerman started as a deli in 1982. Two partners started it. And what they built is a community of food businesses all in one market. So what our vision is to build a community of home contracting business. So do exactly what they did with two exceptions. They're in the food business and we're in the home contracting business. We're followers of Jesus, and they're Jewish. They're great guys. They're a purpose-driven company, which is who I'm aligned with, is purpose-driven companies. And they also have a coaching organization that's part of their community of business. So I learned a lot from them, and they're fanatics about the client experience.
So you recognize the importance of the client experience, but also recognize the importance of being fanatical about your employee experience.
Mm-hmm. Right.
On a side note, I believe that that's the new big thing, right? I believe that you take care of your employees first; they'll take care of the business, and it's not one or the other.
Right.
It's both, but it's difficult to be fanatical about both.
Mm-hmm.
So how have you started to make that transition?
Yeah, so that's that transition actually started in November of 2008, and that was I got connected to C12, which is another mastermind group where they teach you how to build your business as a platform for ministry. So the way I look at it, you can have a Christian who owns a business, but they run the business just like the world does. And on the other end of the spectrum, you can have a business that's truly built as a platform for ministry. So that's what we're trying to do, is move as far in that direction as we can. So my C12 chair had also been trained in the strategic life plan process that was created by a guy by the name of Tom Patterson. And so as part of the C12 experience, he offered this life plan. And so he took me through that. It's a 2.5-day spirit-led retreat. And so what I was able to learn and experience from that was that my unique ability, or my kingdom assignment, really my unique ability, is serving in the kingdom as a connector of connecting people, ideas, and opportunities. And then my calling, or my kingdom assignment, is to support kingdom leaders by connecting with kingdom resources. So again, that was November, or the life plan was in December of 2007. November 2008, we had a strategic planning retreat for our team. And that was the first time I communicated to our team that we're going to convert our traditional owner-operated contracting business into a team-led model that could be duplicated and multiplied for the purpose of learning how to build a business as an economic engine to fund ministries and to develop kingdom leaders living on mission. So that's been 13, 14 years ago, and it's been brutally painful and messy, but we're making progress. So,
Where or how did you learn to get help from others? Because you've already mentioned all these groups, you've mentioned coaches, you've mentioned support, help, books. And I think that there's something about, your life where it kind of clicks that you don't have to do it all by yourself, and that there's others, and you really have stuck to that formula Where did it come from?
Yeah, so I think just part of my DNA, and I think the recovery community experience, and I don't know where I first learned this or heard this, but it's not a sign of weakness to ask for help. And as men, we want to be, and that's kind of the culture. If you got to be self-reliant, you take care of yourself. So I think it was really being open to asking for help, and then learning the value of So my team tells me, "Oh no, not another consultant, not another idea. Don't know. We don't know. No, we it's enough, you know." So anyway, I'm kind of overcoached and overlearned. I need to learn. I'm a visionary, so I'm really good on vision, but I'm really weak on execution. So I need to be able to have teams that can execute. So anyway,
Can you learn too much?
I think So my belief, and it's just my opinion, that learning that doesn't translate into that you don't apply has no value. So,
Okay, so worship, value ideas, worship execution.
there you go. Yep. And that there's a saying that's pretty famous is vision without execution equals a hallucination. So that's a good reminder for me.
I think it's important too. Something you said is it can be messy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like you to talk a little bit about in growing a business and growing people. It's a messy process. And what are some of the things that you are trying to put into place to take that messiness and turn it into something great?
Yeah. So there's relational mess, and then there's technical mess. So a mess would be a breakdown inside something that we do with the business, and the biggest challenge is the relational messes. So what we've adopted is a business model. So EOS is, a lot of people know, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and we're working with an organization out of Akron, Ohio that I call GPOS, which is the Good Place Operating System. So basically what they've done over 20 years, starting with a family business that started in 1965, is they've created this institute to teach how do you build a biblical operating system. And so we're 2 years into that, and we have by far the best leadership team that we've ever had, that is 5 people. And I'm serving in a supporting role to the leadership team, and they're working with the coach out of Akron from Good Place Institute. So that's cleaning all of the process stuff up, and having an operating system has a huge impact on less conflict. So that's part of it.
You know what I find amazing too is you've had a business for a while, and you're still striving to make that business better, because you just said you started this 2 years ago. And so my question would be, from when you started it 2 years ago to where you are now, what kind of progress have you seen that, one, excites you, and two, you think has really benefited your business?
Yeah, so we grew really fast during COVID, and then we, as part of this vision to build out this community of home contracting businesses, we had a concrete floor coating part of our business that we separated into a separate business unit with its own office, and then we purchased a shutter and blind business, and we took on a lot of overhead. And then around early 23, we started seeing business decline, and both of those business units were losing significant money. And so by the second half of 23, we knew we were in big trouble. So we were losing money at an unsustainable rate, and so we had to sell those 2 business units, and basically we just got rid of them. We lost money on them, but we were able to transition the businesses and their teams into good hands. So both of those are doing well. So that was a piece of it. So remind me your question.
So in starting those processes, and obviously there was some lessons during that, but what is the progress you've seen from where you started 2 years ago in trying to implement some of these processes that you think has been successful and beneficial, or that you've learned from it?
Okay, good. I got you. So the benefit of that breakdown with having to sell those 2 business units is that what we had done is we had outgrown our leadership capacity, and as a result, it impacted our financial capacity. So we didn't have the leadership capacity to do what we're doing, and also stressed and strained the leaders to a big extent. So by downsizing, getting back to positive cash flow, and having the best people, the best leadership team we've ever had, what we're doing is focusing on growing our leadership capacity so that we can then grow our financial capacity. So as a essential part of that is having this operating system that we can build out to build up.
Got it.
So that's a big piece, yeah.
So Scott, we've talked a lot about the business side of learning, and I'm curious because business and life are one and the same. How have you taken all these business lessons back into your personal life?
Yeah, so it's an integrated life. People talk about work-life balance. I believe in an integrated life. Things are never balanced. But so I think that really understanding myself, and so understanding myself, and then my relationship, my spiritual journey. So I know my weaknesses very well, and kind of the root of that is a performance mindset. So it's actually a performance addiction. So really by focusing on the people and not the performance is I'm in the third of my life. I'm 62 years old, and I believe God is calling me to serve the kingdom in the third of my life and to help develop and grow leaders and mentoring. So by me getting out of the day-to-day and if I see, and it's as any business owner would experience, that we hear and see and smell things that other people don't experience. And if I act on all those things, then I drive them crazy. So I have to let go of control, and trust is the core issue. So I have to trust the leadership team, and that trust for them only comes by trusting God with my life. So kind of the church model that I grew up in was again about a religion and not about a relationship, and so I got really off track I was focused on pleasing God versus trusting God. So that's a whole nother story, but it's really the essence is trust. So in giving people grace, I've been given an abundance of grace, and I can't expect people to do everything perfectly, and I don't, but I still comment on what's not being done perfectly. So I'm a natural criticizer. I'm not a natural encourager. So I have to focus on catching people doing things right versus inciting. Yeah.
So you've built a lot of self-awareness on your strengths and your weaknesses. How do you teach other people how to do that? How do you teach other people how to become more aware of their strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah, so I would say that really pain is the teacher, and it takes I'm an adrenaline junkie. I have everything to the extreme, so it takes a lot of pain for me to learn. But once I have enough pain, once I cross that pain threshold, I learn it. So I think that's a piece of it. And then I've got two boys that are 19 and 21, and so what I want to do is help them learn from my life. And if I tell them what to do, they're going to do the opposite of it, like I did. So what I'm learning to do is to be the question and not the answer, and learn to be a great listener. So that's a part of it.
I think we would all like to hear a little bit more about the idea of being the question and not the answer, which we are so inclined to be like. And if you have like an example, what does that look like?
Yeah. So my oldest is asking me for career advice and relationship advice, and I would like to tell him what to do. And
Because it's so obvious to us, right?
Yeah, exactly. And but I know that he's a very strong-willed person, and so anyway, he's inviting me into those questions, and so I want to help him discover the pathway without telling him the pathway. So,
And isn't that really about the questions
it
then?
is. Yep.
I think Harvard did has a great review on this about take the monkey off your back and hand it back to them. And are you finding yourself learning instead of giving advice to ask those questions?
I would say I'm very early stage learning, so I have the awareness, and now I need to apply the awareness. So I'm, again, I shouldn't say in every, but in most contexts where I can, I'm trying to be the question and not the answer, because I'm a problem solver. I get high by solving problems, so it's so easy for me to jump in. And anytime there's a big problem and a deadline, I'm on it. But if there's not a big problem and not a deadline, I'm very distracted. So anyway.
So I'm curious about, Well, I'm curious about a lot of things, but let me.
That's my problem too.
I think it's all of our
I had like
problems.
3 different ideas crossing my mind at the same time, so I gotta take a deep breath and start with one. So let's see. I think I'm curious to see where you found a guiding hand, right? So you go through this difficult situation and you're put on this path. You find another difficult situation and you're put on this path. But has this hand also graced you with like a critical moment, like a breakthrough moment where something magical happened that you're like, wow, I've been working towards this all of my life, and luck and opportunity came together and the divine intervened and this good thing happened to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would say it's just this season that we went through, because during that season, I found myself very discouraged and wanting to isolate and very fearful versus faithful. So I think, again, it's God working in my life to take the pain and kind of mold that and shape that and using that breakdown for a breakthrough. So I've discovered much more gratitude for what I do have. I think a lot of times we take for granted what we do have. So in my mind, I was defaulting to the worst case where we were going to lose everything. We were going to go out of business, and my mind, really started to what I call the whispers of the enemy. I was really discouraged, and so what I believe looking back is that we've been redirected in our journey and what God's calling us to do, and again, He wants me to focus on relationships and building the leadership capacity, and He's going to take care of the results. And so, one of the projects that I'm early stage working on is how do we have 5 members of the leadership team? How do I help each one of them flourish both personally and professionally, and make that a coaching project for them? And that's what I'm in the process of working on right now. So that breakdown is just really, I've got to let go. I've got to trust the team, and I've got to let go. So,
many times we think that business success comes from like a magical moment, and sometimes I think those magical moments do happen. Right, the moment somebody gets discovered, the moment somebody gets this big opportunity and it gets parlayed into long-term success. Did you ever have one of those?
Yeah, I mean, I think that just the opportunity to buy this business when I had no money, and it was an opportunity. That was one. I wouldn't be on this path. And then when I tell my life story, sometimes I'll say that it's a story of 3 plans. The first 2 plans were my plans that failed miserably, and the third plan is the plan that I'm currently living out, which I believe is God's plan. So my first plan was I was going to be in the NFL Hall of Fame. I loved the game of football and played that for as long as I could. And then the second thing was I was going to be the Trammell Crow of San Antonio, Missy, Trammell Crow.
Yes.
So I don't know why, but I always think in big terms, and I was going to build this community of home contracting businesses. So I don't know.
So. And then you're in the third act. Not, I guess, again, a lot of different ideas, but it sounds to me like you're looking at everything that has happened as happening for you, not to you. Mm-hmm. Was it always like that? Like, because you've said, this happened for me, so I could do this. Mm-hmm. This happened for me, so I could do that. Mm-hmm. Is that the case? Like, is everything happening for you?
That's my belief. So I believe that God will always redeem the pain, and Jesus told us we are going to have trouble in this life. So, and everybody that I know has had some challenges at some point in their life. So we all have them. It's how do we handle those? So, again, with the breakdown, we have the opportunity to have a breakthrough, or we can. Which is my dark side, which is to go into discouragement and isolation and give up. So,
and then on the other hand, you kind of reemphasize this lesson of things take time, mm-hmm. right? The both successes and failures take time. Mm-hmm. They don't necessarily happen with one big critical decision. Mm-hmm. It's a accumulation and even a compounding of different decisions that either take you to business success or put you in a financial stress. Mm-hmm. And then recognizing that and recognizing that you kind of have to shift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a great point, because there's no straight line plan, as we all know. You have to be able to pivot and redirect, and so yeah.
As a business owner and going through these different phases, How have you found that you needed to readjust yourself in understanding what you want from your business? And I guess where I'm going with the question is those of us that have drive always want more. How do you temper that?
Yeah, so I guess for me, it's the idea of setting a financial finish line. So one of the big influencers in my journey is a guy by the name of R.G. Letourneau, and he was the founder of Letourneau University in Longview. And when I first became part of a ministry that's Biblical Leadership for Excellence, my mentor at the time was Phil Tolbert, and he gave me this book, Mover of Men and Mountains, which is the autobiography of R.G. Letourneau. And basically, he built this extraordinary business of a heavy equipment manufacturing. And by the time World War II came along, his company supplied 70% of the heavy earth-moving equipment for the Allied forces. And so he was making tons of money. But early in his marriage, he and his wife were part of the Christian and Missionary Alliance. And they said, as our income grows, let's don't grow our standard of living. We're already comfortable. We don't need more money. Let's do more to build God's kingdom. And so that's what he did with his business. So he became one of the first or one of the early reverse tithers, live on 10%, give 90% away. But the idea, I think, of setting a financial finish line is very life-giving because it's never enough if you don't. No matter how much we have, we always want more. So that's my experience.
Scott, talk to us a little bit about what building the kingdom is all about. Why you think it matters?
Okay.
What are the benefits of it, right? What happens if you don't?
Yeah. So I would say, and this is I have a very simple mind, so this is the way I break it down, is we have two choices or two pathways. One pathway is Jesus invites us to follow him, and he offers us the abundant life. So that's a choice and a pathway. The other pathway is everything other than that, and that could be pursuing fame, power, money, whatever you want to pursue. That's the other pathway. There's unlimited choices there. And both choices or pathways have one destination. So, and this is my belief that by following Jesus, that is the pathway into eternity with him and his presence in the kingdom of God that is talked about in the Bible. And then the other pathway may lead to lots of success, lots of fame, but it also leads to eternal separation from God and darkness. So that's that piece of it.
What does that alignment with, in connection with God, give people, right? What are they missing out on if they don't go in that direction?
Okay. Yeah, so for me, I believe that the abundant life is all about relationships. It has nothing to do with material things. So again, if we focus on relationships, and Jesus taught us how to live, so and we have the opportunity to practice the way he lived, and we're apprentices to that. We're all broken. We all have issues. We're not going to live a perfect life like he did, but he showed us how to live. And so what I believe is that when we're born very self-centered. We're completely focused on getting as much food as we want when we want it, and kind of that kind of mindset, that survival mode. And Jesus lived a very sacrificial life, and that's my experience. Is the more that the less self-centered I am, the more content and happy I am. So there's this idea of the fruits of the Spirit that's talked about in the Bible. And if I'm not experiencing the fruits of the Spirit, which is love and peace and joy and patience and kindness and self-control, I think that's all of them. But if I'm not experiencing that, then there's a problem at the root of that. And so anyway, so it's really a way of life that leads to the abundant life, which is all about relationships. So if we have tons of money and we have broken relationships, that's not the kind of life I want.
I think a good saying I often hear, and I just read this the other day, to kind of put words in your mouth, would be the difference between success and significance. And what I'm hearing you say in this journey is it's more important about the significance of the relationships than it is the success of, oh yeah, I made it.
Yep, that's very true, and that's one thing I don't think we realize in the Western world, just how our thinking is influenced by this Western mindset about achieving more, achieving and self-satisfaction, gratification. And also don't believe retirement is a biblical concept, so that's a whole part of the third of life concept as well. So,
And I'm hearing a lot of selflessness, right? Selflessness, and it sounds like the less the less selfish you are,
Yep.
the happier you become.
right.
And then you're surrendering. You're surrendering yourself, and then you end up getting what you need. You end up having what you want, and you actually end up getting the things that really matter, versus all the things that you think you want that really don't take you anywhere.
Right. Yeah, it's exactly right. The more self-focused we are, the less happy we are. And what's good now, they have all this brain science and a lot of sociologists, and the more they learn about the brain and the more they learn about sociology, the more it points to a creator. And we are created to be connected to our creator, and we're created to be connected to each other. So anyway.
And there's a lot of studying of the subject that you do, and a lot of teaching of the subject that you do. And I know you're keeping your answers short, but I'm sure we could go into a whole lot of detail into
Lots of rabbit trails, yep.
and in all these subject. Do you have like your preferred subject, like the one that if you're like, hey, if you're going to teach one thing to a group of people, what would that subject be?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So that forces me to think. I would say what the journey that I'm on right now is really what I'm most passionate about, and one of those things is learning to create multi-generational models. So what we're doing with our business, and again, we've had a lot of help on this, is we're going to transition the ownership of this business into what we call a kingdom holding company. So the business will never be sold to a third party, and it won't be inherited by my family. So navigating through that and coming up with the best solution to build it where it's multi-generational. So what we want to do is we want to have this business handed down generation to generation all the way into eternity and structure it that way. So that's something I'm really excited about. I'm also very passionate about city transformation. So the people of God coming together to do the work of God, and do that with people of goodwill. They may not be followers of Jesus, but we have a centered set. We want to do what's best for the city, and we can all work together around that. And so I'm a trustee on a couple of small foundations, and one of the projects I'm working on is to get a collaborative effort of kingdom-minded foundations where we have a collaborative giving model to advance God's kingdom in San Antonio, and it's really around family strengthening and how do we help create healthy families. So that's a whole other thing that I'm passionate about. So those are the two big things: is transitioning this business into this kingdom holding company, and there's other people doing very similar things that I'm learning from, and then this city transformation. So those are the two big things I'm most focused on.
And correct me if I'm wrong. You talk about Jesus, you talk about God, but at the core, it's about those values, and that's why, if I understand correctly, you are open to religions and beliefs, but at the core, there has to be this purposeful approach and this selfless and giving approach, and that would kind of consider you to be part of what you're passionate about. Now, there might be some particulars there, but others are invited.
Right, and I think that's my experience. I have had bad experiences with the church. I've had church wounds, and so a lot of people in the world have had that. And I think if they really understand that it's about a relationship with Jesus, it's not about having a relationship with the church and really living authentically. So I want to live a life that is a life of authenticity, vulnerability, and humility and generosity and simplicity. So that's the way I believe I'm being called to live. And I believe that life is attractive to people, and it gives us an opportunity to open the conversation. But I'm not going to tell somebody how to live, but I'm going to share with them what I've learned. So,
And how do you take some of those values you have, and have you taken those and established them in your core values in your company? Taking that down that line, and so when you go to work, everybody has an understanding of this as a company is what's important to us.
Yeah. So we have two core values for our business, and those two core values are love and excellence. So we have that explained We have a poster on the wall. And then we tell people you do not have to be a follower of Jesus to work here, but we do ask you to live out our core values of love and excellence. And we go on to explain what that means. Because we used to have like 7 core values, and I would ask somebody, what's our core values? And without exception, nobody knew what the 7 core values were. So when I was part of C12 and Mike Sherrow was my chair for a season, he's the one that helped us discover to simplify it and boil it down to 2 core values. And so that's worked really well for us. And we talk about the 4 C's of exceeding clients' expectation. It's craftsmanship, compassion, cleanliness, and communication. If we do those 4 things very well, then we exceed their expectations. And for us, compassion ties into the value of love. And I think you mentioned earlier, one of the things that we talk about is take great care of our team members who take great care of our clients. That's part of the learning where I got that feedback. You care about the client, but you do not care about us. So we really want to live that out, take great care of our team members.
So I think that our audience is going to say, okay, great. That's how they operate and that's how they do things. And I'm sure they run things really nicely, but what's in it for me, the client, right? Yeah. So what do your customers, your clients get from the company living under these values?
Yeah, so I would say I'm biased. So I believe that what we provide are the best products, the best installation, and the best overall client experience. And that's before, during the sale, and very much after the sale. So a lot of companies, if you have a problem 10 years later and you call them, they're not very eager to help you. Where we want to be the opposite. We want them to be so amazed that the way we took care of a problem that we really probably weren't obligated to take care of, that what we want to do is create raving fans who then tell their friends and neighbors and relatives about us.
And it kind of goes back to that idea of referrals being key to your business.
Mm-hmm.
Repeat business being key to your business, of course, referrals as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and how do you do it? How do you consistently provide the best products and the best installation, the best support? I've seen some of it myself, right? Mm-hmm. Like the type of things that you guys do that are not necessarily common. But I'd love for you to give us some of the examples of the things that you do that others just don't.
Yeah, so I think one thing is getting aligned with the right manufacturers. So we have 3 kingdom-minded organizations that are part of our supply chain. And one of them is Marvin Windows out of War Road, Minnesota. And it's a 4th-generation family-owned, family-operated, the only one of the large manufacturers that are family-owned and operated. So we have an incredible relationship with them. There's one of our manufacturers is out of Sugar Creek, Ohio, and it's called Provia. And they manufacture just world-class doors. And so that's our door supplier. And then McCoy's is our siding supplier. So I think that's a piece of it, is having the right partnerships. And so being able to work with companies that have shared values and high levels of trust is a huge part of being able to provide the right products. And then on the installation side, we take great care of the guys that do the installation work for us, which most contractors don't. They try to squeeze as much out of them as they can. And again, they're short-term thinking versus we try to provide the best experience we can for them. So then we can attract great people. And that's one of the things that I've discovered too, is great people attract other great people. So that's just part of creating the culture. And then having the mindset that try to find a way to say yes. So if the client is asking for something, well, I don't know if I could do that, but let me find out and get back to you. And we have what we call a brand promise credit. So if we were to do a project for you and you were not happy with something, usually it doesn't escalate to me now, but if it does escalate to me, I would find out what do we need to do to make it right, and we would do whatever it took to make it right. And whatever we spent on that goes into a line item in our financials called brand promise credit. So we can measure how much money we spend to have a raving fan or to make a client happy. But what I've learned over time is that if I make you mad, and how many people are you going to tell what a jerk I am and don't ever do business with? I can't measure how much business I lost, but I can measure how much money we spent to make sure we had a raving fan. So that's a piece of it.
And then talk to me a little bit about that experience. So I experienced, I guess, support like never before. Somebody assigned to me, calling me, giving me updates on the process, checking in to see if I was satisfied at every corner. I mean, that probably costs money, takes effort. You need extra people? Why is that important to you, and what do you see that does for your customers?
Yeah, so I think it goes back to the purpose of our business. We're not a profit-driven, profit-focused business, so that's the big piece. And we have a lot of additional overhead that we could get by without, but we can't do both. We can't take great care of our clients and have low overhead. So that's part of it.
And then the wonderful products, Missy had shared something, so I'll let you share it one more time.
Sure. Probably shortly after you took over the business, I used your company and, like I said, put in windows. And 30 years later, I still have amazing windows. And when I think of windows, I think of your company. I get flyers in the mail from some of your competitors and just go in the trash can because I still think of your company. And I had that experience. I had amazing windows that what was given to me and stated a lifetime warranty is still functioning as a lifetime. And the people that came were amazing and did a great job. And so you're absolutely correct when you say you take care of the people that hire you to come work for them.
Yeah, and I tell people we do make mistakes, but we'll do whatever it takes to make it right because unfortunately we do make mistakes. So, yeah.
Actually, the testament to the best companies out there is not how they do when things go normal or well. It's how they respond when things go bad. And I think that is the key, really, in business, right? How do you handle your worst situations? I want to ask you another question. Speaking of what you frequently tell people, what is some advice that you frequently share, to people, right? I'm sure there's a few Scott Barr isms around there somewhere, some things that you just consistently say. What are some of those, or one of those?
Yeah, well, one of them is internally is, whenever there's a question, what do? We need to do whatever we need to do to make it right. So always do the right thing no matter what it costs. So that's one thing.
No matter what it costs.
Yeah. Yeah, because when money hits the table, you can see true character,
Isn't that a true statement?
Right?
Can it get expensive?
Absolutely, yeah.
And you still do it?
Yeah, and again, we measure it, and I'm a fanatic. That's part of my control issue is I like to measure everything. So,
okay. So now let's turn it into the home.
okay.
So what is some advice that you could give our viewers regarding their home that is either counterintuitive, uncommon, most people get wrong, or advice that they just don't get?
Okay. Yeah, I would say that in our industry, it's like the car business. There's a lot of deception used in sales, and a lot of things that you can do to optimize or maximize your bottom line. And there's a lot of deception around the way things are sold. They offer these huge discounts and buy now. So I would say never buy anything that you have to buy now or the price goes down, because the companies that are super profitable have this figured out. They know the human emotion. They know how to manipulate that. And so never buy anything on. If you have to buy today, just tell them no and see what happens. And then just be aware of there's nothing for free. And these guys that are very clever at doing, they have a pricing model that has built in these discounts. So they make it look like, this big sale. And
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
One of your competitors sends those kind of note cards in the mail all the time.
Yep. And we were part of an organization that's the way they did business, and we're no longer part of that organization. So, yeah.
My favorite one is, we are in your neighborhood installing windows and can give you a special price.
Right.
3 different companies in the same week said the same thing, which is something I see happen, right? Like somebody had success somewhere with that strategy.
Oh, yeah.
They
works.
taught it to everybody else, and now everybody in the industry is using these gimmicks. So don't fall for those.
Right.
How about regarding your product, right?
Mm-hmm.
How does somebody know or can benefit from them? Because I believe that there's a lot of savings that can happen in the home. There's a lot of home improvement that can happen when they have the right stuff, in this case, windows, siding, etc. What is something that they can notice that they might be like, if you're having this problem, this product could solve it?
Right. Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways we could go with that question, but I think one thing is that we select products that we know are going to last a long, long time, and so for us that's really a composite. So we have composite windows made out of fiberglass, and then we have composite siding, which is made out of fiber cement, and then we have our doors that are made out of fiberglass. So it's having very durable products, and then making sure they're properly installed. So that's a piece of it.
Do you ever go to like friends' homes and or people's homes, and you're probably looking at every window,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So imagine that you just went to a house from someone, and they just happen to be in our audience. What are some things that you're looking at or trying to identify, and then what's some sort of advice that you would give that homeowner?
Yeah, that's tough because I can go into any space and my eyes will find anything that's not right. So when it comes to craftsmanship and the details is how tight things are, how much gaps there are, how much caulk is used. And so you can, I guess you with some level of training, you can start to look at what's right and what's not right. And then they can always have, get a second opinion from an expert as far as the craftsmanship side. So I think that's some of it.
Okay. Now, let me give you this scenario.
Okay.
Somebody's listening at home, and they're wondering, do I need new windows? Do I not need new windows?
Mm-hmm.
How would they know if they need something, and what would be the benefit of whatever they have versus getting something new?
Yeah, so I think that there's two things that come into play. One is aesthetics, how does it look? And the other one is functionality, how does it work? So something that's not functioning well, whether it's not operating well, one of the things that we see a lot is what we call seal failure, which is fogged up glass. And a lot of people, I shouldn't say it that way, some people think that they need to replace their windows and they can just replace their glass, which is much cheaper. So some companies will come out and talk them into replacing their windows when all they need is replace their glass. I don't want people to make that mistake. So, yeah. So,
That's a big one.
yeah.
I've seen that a lot.
Yep. And then there's the energy savings component, which ties into the functionality. So there is a return on investment for replacement windows because of the energy savings, and you have to look at what the payback is. And then there's benefits like noise reduction and air infiltration with pollen and stuff that people are allergic to. So you really look at all the benefits, and depends on which benefit is most important to you. Or if it's just you don't like, you want to give the house a facelift, that's an option too.
Is there like a rule of thumb in terms of how old the windows are before you need to, get them checked? Or is there a style or type of window that needs to be checked, or, facing any direction? Is there anything that, again, I'm in my home and I'm just going to do a little assessment here, and I'm going to see if I may benefit from this?
Yeah. So Missy, I'm sure you're familiar with this, but builders in general, we call them builder grade windows.
Yeah.
They use the cheapest windows that they can, because when people are buying houses, they're not looking at the windows. Mm-hmm. And so the windows that have been used probably starting around 1990, 2000, the quality has gone down because they squeezed the cost out of them. And so we replace windows that are 10, 20, 30 years old. And then a lot of vinyl windows are used in new construction, and there's good vinyl windows and there's cheap vinyl windows. So the cheap vinyl windows have a tendency to fail pretty often. And some of that failure is around the frame, where you get some sagging and it doesn't operate properly, or it just starts to come apart because of the heat. And South Texas is a brutal climate, so low quality vinyl windows do not do well in the South Texas climate.
No, and I'll concur with that. The West Sun can be brutal on windows, and that's going to tell you your test really quick on how good that warranty is or not. And you're right, most builders only have 5 years. Mm-hmm. So, and you see them fail right at year 5.
Yep. Yeah, the builder wants to get the house sold and they make their money. And
yes.
As long as they can get out of their warranty claim.
So if windows are fogged, you probably need to check them. Mm-hmm. If the room's too hot, maybe you don't have the right type of protection. Mm-hmm. If there seems to be a lot of dust in the house, it could be it getting through through the windows. If the electricity bill is too high, all of these things could be things that you might want to look at that windows could be the solution for. Is that about right?
Absolutely, yeah. And they make a big difference in the way a home looks, so the aesthetics of it.
And I know we've talked a lot about windows, but what about the other parts to your business that you do besides windows?
Yeah, as far as siding and so that's one of the things that I feel like gives us an advantage is we were the first siding company to switch from vinyl siding to fiber cement siding in 1997. So we have a great relationship with the manufacturer and the distributor, McCoy's, and we've learned a lot about that business in terms of installation, what works, what doesn't work. So I feel like that's a competitive advantage for us in terms of being able to install that product properly, and that James Hardie fiber cement siding installed properly and painted properly. We use Sherwin-Williams Duration, which is a very high quality coating. It's a one and done. So and that makes a huge difference in the way the home looks as well. So that's the siding benefits, and also with the house wrap that goes underneath it, it will improve the air infiltration and energy efficiency as well. It's not really a big energy efficient because the siding has a low R value, but what it does in terms of sealing up the home and reducing the air infiltration is helpful. And then our doors, a lot of people have doors that don't operate well, and there's a lot of wood doors in the market that are just need to be replaced. So the fiberglass doors that we offer from Provia that look and feel like wood, but are not wood.
So curious question when it comes to cement fiber, because you see that used a lot today. What's an indication of a really bad install?
Yeah, so in the new construction world, the guys that install the siding are typically part of the framing crew and not the cornice crew or the trim crew. So close enough is close enough when you're framing. And you'll see one of the things that we do that's different than what's done in new construction is we install the trim boards, the corner boards, before the siding, so you don't get the gap. So new construction will run the siding to the corner, and then they'll put the trim boards on top of it, and you have all these. It's just ugly.
Yes.
And it's much faster and much lower cost, but it just doesn't look good. So there's a lot of little things like that. Another one is that when you do a wall of siding, you don't want any of the joints to line up. And in new construction, you'll go to a wall that looks like a zipper where all the joints, because they just go as fast as they can. That's the fastest way to do it. So it's little things like that you can really tell the difference between what I would say is just a low quality installation versus high quality installation. And then using the right caulk and the right paint. Builders use the cheapest caulk that they can, and that's guaranteed to crack in a short period.
Yes,
versus
it
high
is.
quality caulk. It doesn't, in the overall cost of the job, it doesn't make much difference. But again, a builder mindset is to squeeze as much cost out as they can to get their cost per square foot down as low as they can. So,
thank you, Scott. As we start to kind of wrap up the podcast, I have a couple more questions. So, what would you tell someone that is struggling right now, struggling with life, struggling with business? You've talked about that you've gone into a situation where you've been like afraid, and there's a lot of fear out there right now, whether it's wars, economy, presidencies, whatever it might be. They might be struggling with that. They might be struggling with something else. What would you tell them?
yeah, again, I would go back to it's not a sign of weakness to ask for help. And I think most people have people in their life that are trusted. So I would reach out to a trusted relationship and let them help you get connected into other trusted relationships. So that's one thing I would do.
And it's interesting because it's counterintuitive, right? When you're in a bad situation, the last thing that you want to do is ask for help and go out there, as you had mentioned. You kind of want to go into isolation and you want to retreat. How do you overcome it? Because you said I was feeling that way, but you took some action.
Yeah, so I would say that and I'm going to speak from a male perspective, it's very difficult to be open and honest about what's really going on inside of me. And again, that started when I was 20 years old, and I'm 62, so it's taken me 42 years, and I'm still learning how to be vulnerable and be open and honest with people, because I believe that being authentic breeds authenticity. So people that are not comfortable with being authentic, they'll opt out, but people that really want an authentic relationship will lean into that. So I think that's the biggest thing is being authentic with people you can trust. And I find in my life that a lot of the people that are followers of Jesus, that's the way they live. And that's the opportunity as well.
Thank you for that. So 62 years old.
Yep.
What are you most proud of
Oh, man.
to this point in your life?
Yeah, and that's something I struggle with is I'm very, very hard on myself. I have unrealistic expectations of myself and others. So I would say, most proud of my family. I was married once before, and it was everything not to do and the not a good fit. And I learned from that. I read I don't know how many books and got lots of counseling. So the next time I made sure I was on the right path. So I'm extremely blessed by my wife, and we're very different personalities. She's very laid back and tender and gentle and kind and loving and patient, all the things that I'm not. So I think that, and then out of that marriage, our two boys, just the privilege to be a father is huge for me. And so my desire is to help them discover what they're created to do and help them live that out, but they're not going to inherit a business. So that's something that I'm proud of because I think, again, I'm very passionate about multi-generational models. So I want to help them and then have them help their kids. And anyway.
So at the end of your days,
Mm-hmm.
how will you have grown from being proud of this to being proud of what?
Yeah, I think that if what I want people to say about me is that he was authentic. He was vulnerable. He was authentic. It's not about what he did. It was who he was. It's about who I'm being versus what I did, and that's really hard for me, being focused on performance and results and having unrealistic expectations. So yeah, so I would want people to say he was kind, he was patient, he was loving. That's success for me. So.
And you're asking of yourself a big transformation.
Yeah, and it's so. And for me, I believe that transformation is only possible through Jesus. So that's my experience.
Thank you very much, Scott. Anything that I've missed? Any final thoughts, comments, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think that if you're struggling and if things aren't right, then that's pain. Just pay attention to the pain. I believe that that our intelligence is fixed. And again, I have a very simple mind. I don't feel like I'm smart, but I understand things and I can connect things. So our intelligence is fixed for the most part, but our emotional intelligence is not. And so I think I've gone from very low EQ to growing my emotional intelligence. And again, I believe that my emotional maturity is tied to my spiritual maturity, and my spiritual maturity is tied to my physical well-being. So it's all that tied together. So there's no, and I believe that no matter what level you get to, whether it's emotional maturity or spiritual maturity, there's always another level to go to, and that's God's design. We never get to a destination and say, okay, I don't have to grow anymore. I can stop learning. And I think that there's a lot of joy in the journey of learning and learning in community with other like-minded people.
Scott, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a wonderful experience to talk to you and continue to learn from your experiences and your views and your perspectives. And I think our audience will have a lot to work on and think about as well. So thank you so much for today.
Yeah, no, I'm grateful to y'all for letting me share the journey.
Thank you.